Some people say Amy Heche died in that fire. Others say she never made it to the hospital alive. But the truth is far older and far darker than any headline they printed afterward. Because before the crash, before the flames, Amy was being followed. Not by paparazzi, not by drugs or trauma, but by someone who once owned pieces of her life the rest of the world never saw. And I know that because I was there inside the facility where they kept her hidden, watching the way Ellen's shadow moved through those halls long before the cameras ever did. This was the scariest time of my life, the closest I've ever been to fear wearing a human face. And everything that happened next began the moment Amy whispered one truth the world was never meant to hear. I remember who she is. They don't advertise the place. There's no website, no brochure, no wellness influencers bragging about it on Instagram. The entrance is a narrow turnoff from a Malibu Canyon road, easy to miss unless you know exactly where to look. A faded wooden sign reads private property, but that's a distraction. The real gate is 100 yards deeper, hidden beneath the branches of 2 old cypress trees. That's where the guards stand, not security guards. Handlers dressed in slate gray uniforms. No name tags, no insignia. They all carry the same blank expression, the same radio clipped to the same hip. Their job is simple: keep people out, and keep certain people very, very in. I used to drive past that turnoff every morning after my shift, wondering who the hell would build a mental health facility this deep in the mountains. Back then, I still thought of it as a hospital. Private, maybe? Or a retreat for celebrities who needed to recalibrate, which was the word they used during my onboarding. It took one night for me to realize how wrong that was. The compound itself feels like it's holding its breath. Beige floors, teal-tinted lights, digital waterfalls looping on every wall. A soft hum vibrates through every hallway, a low, steady frequency you stop noticing after the first week. They pipe eucalyptus into the vents to keep guests calm, though it always made me feel strangely detached, like my thoughts were being muffled. I worked nights, level 3 East, 32 years old. No degree, no family calling to check in. I wasn't looking to save the world. I just needed the money. My mother had a stroke the year before, and the medical bills piled up like sandbags around my neck. Renewal Wing paid double what I made anywhere else. They didn't care about my past or my lack of qualifications. They only cared that I signed the NDA and didn't ask questions, so I didn't. Most nights were quiet. Guests paced. Some whispered to no one. Some looked through you as if trying to remember your face. I told myself it was trauma, detox, exhaustion, anything except what it actually was. Then they brought her in. It was 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was logging vitals when the Southgate alarm chimed softly on my monitor. That gate is never used. It has no cameras, by design. Just motion sensors and a single access code, known only to upper staff. But a vehicle had come through. I stepped into the hallway just as 2 handlers rushed past, guiding someone between them. No stretcher, no wheelchair. She was walking on her own feet, barefoot, unsteady, but refusing to fall. Amy Heche. She wore a pale linen intake gown, the kind they give to new arrivals. Her hair hung in tangled strands across her cheeks. There were bruises along her forearms, but her posture told a different story. Shoulders tight, chin lifted, eyes sweeping the room like she was memorizing every exit in seconds. They logged her as guest 7. She didn't look broken. She looked furious. One handler tried to steady her. She jerked her arm away and spat out the first words I ever heard her say. I remember everything. Her voice sounded shredded. Maybe from screaming, maybe from not sleeping. Maybe both. They led her to room 7, the isolation suite at the far end of the East Wing. I watched through the observation glass. She paced for hours, ignored the water, ignored the sedation, ignored the cameras entirely. Sometimes she talked to herself, too quietly for the mics to catch. I could read only fragments on her lips. She thinks I forgot. She thinks she can overwrite me. I saw the second one. The second one. I assumed she meant a person, an ex, a friend, someone who betrayed her. Celebrities always carried their own storms. It wasn't my job to interpret them, but later, during the log review, the audio caught one sentence clearly. Quiet, exhausted, spoken to no one. She thinks I didn't see the subtle. She thinks I didn't see her twice. I replayed it 3 times. Twice. I didn't understand what she meant. Not until days later. 3 nights after she arrived, everything shifted. I was doing rounds when a sound echoed through the West Wing, the elevator chime. A sound I had never heard before. That elevator didn't exist on the map they gave us. It was sealed behind a door marked authorized entry only. I had never once seen it open. But that night it did. 2 figures stepped out, Amy Heche and Ellen DeGeneres. Ellen wore black scrubs with no badge. Her blonde hair was pulled tight against her scalp. She walked like someone who owned the entire building. Not visiting. Not comforting, but inspecting it. Her hand rested lightly on Amy's shoulder, guiding her forward with a softness that didn't match the fear in Amy's eyes. They passed directly in front of me. Amy looked away. Ellen didn't. Her gaze locked onto mine, sharp, cold, deliberate. Like she had been expecting me, just long enough to make my breath catch. Then her eyes flickered. Dark, pitch black, completely black. A blink later, the moment snapped back to normal, and she continued down the corridor with Amy beside her. Heading toward the door no staff member had ever entered. The door to reconditioning. The sign above the door lit up. Memory stabilization in progress. I stood frozen in the hallway long after they vanished behind the double doors. That was the night I realized the truth. This place wasn't about healing. It was about rewriting people. And Amy was next. 2 nights passed before I saw them again. I spent those days pretending everything was normal. Pretending. I hadn't watched Ellen DeGeneres walk a bruised, sleep-deprived Amy Heche into a room no guest ever came out the same. I convinced myself it wasn't my business. That this facility had its own rules, its own rhythm, and I'd be an idiot to get caught between them. But when I clocked in for my next shift, something felt wrong. The air was heavier. The lights were dimmer. The building felt aware. At 12:47 a.m., I saw them. Amy was walking slowly down the hallway again, barefoot. Shoulders hunched like gravity itself was crushing her. And beside her, calm, composed, perfect, was Ellen. No handlers. No escort team. Just the 2 of them. The closer they got, the more wrong the scene looked. Ellen's hand rested lightly on Amy's back. Not comforting. Not guiding. Steering. Amy didn't fight it. She didn't speak. But her jaw was tight. Her eyes flickering like she was silently battling a reality she never agreed to. They were heading to room D7 again, the reconciliation wing. My stomach dropped. I shouldn't follow them. I knew that. But something in me refused to look away. I waited until they disappeared through the double doors, then slipped into a small utility room across from the entrance. It was cramped. Disinfectant carts, boxes of scrubs, and a metal crate stacked beneath a large ventilation grate. I remembered this vent from training. If you hear anything through this shaft, my supervisor had said, ignore it. Privacy regulations. Privacy, right? I climbed onto the crate. It groaned under my weight and pressed, my face close to the metal slats. Through the gaps, I could see part of the room. Amy sat in a metal chair, hands clasped between her knees. Her hair was tangled and damp. Her eyes were swollen but alive, sharp, defiant. Ellen stood 3 feet away, posture relaxed, face unreadable. Then she began. Her voice was soft. Too soft. The kind of softness people use right before doing something cruel. Do you remember our relationship? Amy didn't answer. Ellen repeated the question. Same tone, same pitch, same unnatural precision. Do you remember our relationship? Still nothing. The silence stretched so long my chest tightened. Then Amy lifted her head slowly, and for the first time that night she spoke. Her voice was raw but steady. Stop asking me that. Ellen didn't blink, didn't move. She asked again. Do you remember our relationship? Amy snapped. I remember everything, and I cannot wait to expose you. Her voice cracked, but it didn't break. She sounded like someone who'd already lost everything. Someone with nothing left but truth. But Ellen didn't react. Not to the insult, not to the rage. She just shifted her weight and said calmly, What did you tell Twitch? Amy froze. Completely. Her anger turned into terror in a single heartbeat. Please, she whispered. He has nothing to do with this. Don't hurt him. I swear, don't. Ellen leaned in, her voice cold as ice. What did you tell him? That question sucked the air out of the room. For the next 3 hours, she rotated between the same 2 questions. Do you remember our relationship? What did you tell Twitch? Over and over and over. Amy screamed until her voice cracked, then whispered until she couldn't whisper anymore, then just shook, silent tears sliding down her cheeks. Meanwhile, Ellen never raised her voice, never blinked, never got tired. Her patience was the scariest part. My legs were going numb on top of the crate. My fingers were locked around the edge of the vent. I didn't dare move, but eventually I had to. Just a tiny shift. Barely anything. The crate gave a faint wooden creak. Ellen stopped mid-sentence. Then she turned her head, slow, toward the wall I was hiding behind. She walked toward the vent, with the calm confidence of someone checking on a sleeping pet. Then she leaned forward and smelled through the vent. A long, deliberate inhale. My entire body went cold. She didn't speak. Didn't call it out. Didn't accuse. She just listened to the silence I was barely holding on to. A long pause. 10 seconds. Maybe 30. Maybe forever. Then she turned and walked out of the room. No goodbye. No instructions. Just gone. I slid to the floor, legs trembling, lungs burning from holding my breath. I stumbled out of the utility room. Out of the wing. Out of the building when my shift ended, though I barely remember clocking out. I made it home just after sunrise. Closed the blinds, collapsed into bed, but I couldn't sleep. Even in the dim half-light of my room, something felt wrong. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, and in the far corner a figure stood, not moving, not breathing, just watching. The silhouette was unmistakable. Short blonde hair, rigid posture, black eyes, perfect circles of void staring straight at me. I blinked. The figure didn't disappear. It just stayed there, silent and patient, like it was waiting for me to close my eyes first. I didn't sleep at all that day, and that was the moment I realized whatever was happening to Amy wasn't confined to the facility. Ellen could follow you home, and she had. I didn't plan what came next. It was instinct, survival. By then, I knew I wouldn't make it another week if I kept quiet. Not after what I saw through that vent. Not after that shadow followed me home. Ellen wasn't just interrogating Amy. She was breaking her. Slowly. Methodically. Peeling her identity away layer by layer until nothing was left. And if Anne stayed here, she'd disappear like everyone else. That night, I decided to end it. The facility was engineered for order. Perfect order. Everything locked, everything silent, everything controlled. But the system has a flaw. At 1:45 a.m., I walked to the wall panel in the east wing, hesitated for one breath, then pulled the fire alarm lever. No sirens, just red strobes exploding across the hallways like veins of light. Staff panicked immediately. They're trained for calm, but they never are. Doors unlocked automatically, monitors shut down, emergency lights snapped to full brightness. Perfect chaos. I ran through the south corridor, past the empty nurse station, toward the far end, room 7, Amy's room. Through the glass window, I saw her curled on the floor, arms wrapped around herself, wearing the same pale linen gown she'd had on for days, damp with sweat. Her hair clung to her face. Her breathing was shallow but alert. When I unlocked the door, she didn't flinch. She didn't even look up. It was like she'd been awake, waiting for this exact moment. "Amy," I whispered. "We don't have time." Her head lifted slowly. Her red-rimmed eyes locked onto mine. There was depth there. Fear, yes, but something else too. Something determined. She stood without hesitation, almost like she already knew I would come. "Where do I go?" she asked, her voice low. "Maintenance corridor," I said. "Left gate is open. Take the stairwell. No cameras, no sensors." She stepped past me, her bare feet slapping softly on the polished floor. But just as she reached the doorway, she stopped. Her hand shot out and gripped my wrist, cold, strong. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Never forget who she is." A warning, a plea, a truth. "She'll make you think you dreamed all of this," she said. "But you didn't." Then she let go and disappeared into the corridor. I stayed behind, heart pounding, hands shaking, mind racing. I had to erase everything, any sign of what I'd done. I headed down to the reconciliation chamber, the room where Ellen had spent hours drilling those two questions into Amy's mind. The door was propped open, the lights humming low. Inside, the air felt thick, charged with something wrong. The wall screens were frozen on static-filled frames of Amy's face, distorted, stretched, terrified. I wiped the logbook clean, deleted my entry from the system, erased my ID stamp from the door panel. I unplugged the conditioning machine, unplugged the wall feeds, unplugged everything I could without triggering a lockdown. I was almost finished when the door clicked shut behind me. My blood went cold. She stepped inside like she'd been waiting in the darkness the entire time. Ellen. But not the Ellen the world recognized. Not the one who danced on TV. Not the one who smiled for crowds. This one didn't smile. This one barely breathed. This one filled the room like a shadow stretching over water. Slow. Quiet. Inevitable. Her eyes drifted around the chamber before settling on me. "You've been busy," she said, voice soft, almost amused. I couldn't answer. My throat locked. Ellen walked further in, hands clasped behind her back like she was giving a tour of a museum she owned. "You think you're helping Amy?" she asked. "You think you're helping her? You don't understand. This place isn't about breaking people. It's about fixing memories." I swallowed hard. "She didn't need fixing," I managed to say, though my voice barely came out. Ellen tilted her head, studying me. "She told you things, didn't she?" she asked. Stories about me, about our past, about Twitch. That name froze me. She stepped closer. You know what happens when people tell the wrong story? Her lips curled into a hollow smile. They stop existing. She stopped just 1 foot away, close enough that I could see my own reflection in her eyes. And that's when I realized her eyes weren't right. They were black, completely black, like 2 holes punched through reality itself. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Do you remember our relationship? My breath caught. She repeated it. Do you remember our relationship? This time something pulled at me. A pressure at the back of my skull. A flicker of images. Ones that weren't mine. Amy screaming. Twitch terrified. Ellen standing over both of them like a judge. I realized then that she wasn't just interrogating. She was removing, replacing, reshaping, pressing her reality into mine. She asked again, slow and patient. Do you remember our relationship? I didn't know what answer she wanted, but a voice inside me, small, shaking, whispered exactly what I had to say. I forced it out. No. Everything stopped. The humming, the pressure, the pulling. Ellen stepped back. Her black eyes softened. Blue returned like nothing had ever changed. She smiled, a satisfied, quiet smile. Good, she murmured. You're learning. Then she turned, opened the door, and walked out without looking at me once. By the time I reached the main lobby, firefighters were already there, checking halls, running scans, shouting orders. No fire, no smoke, no cause. False alarm, one said irritably. Reset it. Staff were already going back to their stations, but I didn't return to mine. I didn't clock out. I didn't gather my things. I walked straight out the back exit, past the firefighters, past my coworkers, past everything that had kept me silent. I didn't stop walking until the building was just a shadow in my rearview mirror. That was the last night I ever set foot in that place. And the last night I ever slept without fear. I didn't turn on the news for 3 days. I slept in my car the night I left, if you can even call it sleep. I parked at a truck stop somewhere, just past the Arizona border, and sat there until sunrise, staring at the empty highway, replaying one moment over and over in my head. Do you remember our relationship? No. The answer felt wrong, forced, like I'd given her something I didn't mean to give just to survive. And yet, it worked. I walked out alive, but something followed me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her silhouette in the corner of my room. Every time a car passed behind me on the highway, I checked the rear view twice. Every time I blinked, I felt the echo of her voice under my skin. 3 days later, while filling up my tank, I opened my phone. For the first time since I fled, I opened my phone. That's when I saw the headline. Amy Heche in critical condition after fiery crash. Vehicle erupts in flames in Mar Vista. My breath left my chest. The article said she drove her Mini Cooper into a house. Said the fire was intense. Said it took nearly an hour to extract her. But the timeline didn't fit. She'd escaped the facility only hours before the crash. No one could move that fast. Not in her state. Unless she wasn't alone. Unless someone intercepted her. I searched for the video. The one circulating everywhere. The helicopter footage. You've probably seen it too. The charred car. The firefighters. The stretcher. The white tarp covering her body. And just as they load her into the ambulance, she sits up. Not slowly. Not groggily. She jerks upright like something yanked her from above. The paramedics jump back. Someone on the helicopter radio lets out a shaky gasp. Amy fights. Thrashes. As if she knows this is her last chance to stay alive. They sedate her within seconds, and the tarp falls back over her face. The clip ends. But my nightmares didn't. I watched that footage dozens of times, searching for something, anything that made sense. Instead, all I kept hearing was her whisper in that hallway. Never forget who she is. Because Amy wasn't trying to escape the crash. She was trying to escape them. The same people who tried to rewrite her mind. The same people who kept clones of high-value individuals underground. The same people Amy said were building replacements, preparing. For the day the public needed a more obedient version. And she knew names. She knew faces. She knew the project wasn't small. She knew certain celebrities weren't exactly who we think they are. I remembered her voice through the vent grate. Shaking, terrified, whispering. Who are you people? Now I understood why. She wasn't just fighting for her story. She was fighting for her identity. And Ellen was the one trying to take it from her. The reports shifted quickly after the crash. At first they said her condition was stable, then critical, then grave, then brain dead. Her podcast episodes disappeared. Mentions of her documentary vanished. Her hospital details sealed. Her medical records scrubbed. 2 days later, the announcement came. Amy Heche has passed. but I didn't believe it. Not because I thought she survived, but because everything surrounding her death looked orchestrated, timed, managed, silenced. And then, 4 months later, it happened again. Stephen, Twitch boss, one of the few people Amy trusted. One of the only people she might have told something to. Someone Ellen kept very close. His death made no sense. The motel staff said he didn't seem distressed. Security said they never heard a gunshot. No struggle, no note, no footage, no explanation. And yet the headline came. DJ Twitch dies at 40, apparent suicide. But the timeline didn't match the cameras. Something was missing. Something was wrong. Something... It reminded me of the way Anne's timeline shifted. Cleaned up, shaped, corrected. And in the middle of all those reports, all those statements, Ellen stayed completely silent. Not a tweet, not an interview, not a single word. It was the quietest she'd ever been. And that alone made the hair on my neck stand up. Because Anne said it first in that room, in that voice that still echoes in my ears. What did you tell Twitch? And the look on her face when Ellen asked it. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't fear. It was grief. As if she already knew exactly what would happen next. After Twitch died, the signs around me intensified. A black SUV parked outside the laundromat while I folded clothes. An envelope slid under my motel door with no return address. Inside was a single torn Bible page. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. John 1:5. The same verse Anne's old friend, James, used to bring up in interviews when he talked about Hollywood. No name, no explanation. Just the verse. Some nights I caught a reflection in glass. Blonde hair. A pale gown, swollen eyes, but when I turned, no one was there. I told myself it wasn't her ghost. I told myself it was just memory. But I don't know anymore. People say I'm paranoid. People say I'm imagining things. People say I absorbed too much of Anne's fear, too much of her trauma. But I know what I saw. I know what she whispered to me as she ran barefoot down that hallway. She'll make you think you dreamed all of this. And Ellen could. She had that kind of power. She didn't need to hurt you. She didn't need to chase you. She just needed you to forget. To lose the thread. To question yourself. To rewrite your own memories until hers were the only version left. That's why I left. That's why I've been hiding. And that's why I wrote this down. Because Anne remembered. Twitch remembered. And now they're both gone. So I'll ask you, the only ones left to hear this, do you think Ellen had anything to do with their deaths? Tell me in the comments before this video disappears.